My sister banned me from her wedding because she doesn't want adopted people there, only real relatives. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, the pattern was always there, woven into every birthday, every holiday, every milestone of my 32 years. But when you grow up being told you should be grateful just for existing, you learn to accept crumbs and call them cake. I was 3 when they adopted me. My brother was 5, their biological son, their real child. I know I shouldn't think of it that way, but that is how they treated it. He was theirs by blood, by right, by some cosmic claim I could never match no matter how hard I tried. And God, did I try. The first memory that really crystallized this dynamic happened when I was 8 years old, Christmas morning, specifically. My brother tore open a brand new gaming console, the kind every kid in our school was begging for. His face lit up like someone had handed him the moon. When I opened my gift, I found a stack of used books, pages yellowed, someone else's name scratched out inside the covers. Not even books I had asked for, just books someone was getting rid of. I remember looking at my parents, waiting for the second gift, the real gift. My mother smiled at me and said, "We thought you would appreciate something educational. You are always such a thoughtful child." My brother did not even look up from his console. My father patted my head and told me I should say thank you. I said thank you. 7 years later, at 13, I had my 8th grade graduation. I was valedictorian, had spent weeks writing a speech I was nervous and proud of in equal measure. My parents promised they would be there. They promised. The morning of graduation, my brother had a basketball game, just a regular season game, nothing special. He was not even a starter. They went to his game instead. I gave my speech to a crowd that included my best friend's parents, my teachers, and an empty space where my family should have been. Afterwards, my friend's mother hugged me and told me I was exceptional. I smiled and told her it was fine. They had something important to attend. She did not argue, but her eyes said she knew the truth. When I got home that evening, still in my graduation dress, my parents were watching television with my brother. My mother glanced up and said, "Oh, how was it? We are so sorry we missed it, but your brother's team won." My brother gave me a half wave, already back to scrolling on his phone. My father did not even look away from the screen. I went to my room and cried for 3 hours. Then I dried my face, looked at myself in the mirror, and made a decision. If I could not earn their love by being good, by being smart, by being grateful, maybe I could earn something else. Respect, maybe. Or at least I could build a life where I did not need anything from them. I threw myself into building a future. Scholarships, part-time jobs, internships, networking. I graduated college with honors and a job offer already in hand. By 25, I was a sales manager at a mid-sized tech company. By 28, I had bought my first property, a modest 2-bedroom condo that was mine. Fully mine, no one could take it away. That feeling, owning something that was just mine, was intoxicating. I bought a second property 2 years later as an investment, then a third by the time I turned 32. Nothing extravagant, but solid, well-chosen mortgage payments I could comfortably afford. I was proud of myself in a way I had never been able to feel about anything else. My brother, meanwhile, still lived at home at 34. He worked part-time at a retail store, spent most of his money on hobbies and nights out, and showed no signs of ever launching into independent adulthood. My parents never pushed him. They cooked his meals, did his laundry, paid for his car insurance. When I would visit for holidays, he would barely acknowledge me, and they would spend dinner talking about his life, his interests, his plans that never materialized. I told myself it did not bother me. I had built my own life. I was successful. I was independent. I did not need their validation. Then my parents called me on a Tuesday evening last October. They wanted to talk about something important. My father said, "Could I come over for dinner that weekend?" Something in his tone made my stomach clench, but I agreed. When I arrived Saturday evening, they sat me down in the living room with the kind of serious expressions people wear when delivering bad news. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. My father cleared his throat twice before speaking. They were retiring early. My father was 60, my mother was 58. They had both left their jobs the month before. And they had almost no savings. They had spent decades prioritizing comfort over planning, taking vacations they could not quite afford, buying my brother whatever he needed without question. Now they were facing the reality of trying to live on minimal retirement benefits. They needed help. They needed a place to live. I should have said no. In retrospect, every rational bone in my body was screaming at me to set a boundary, to protect myself, to remember every slight and every disappointment, and every moment I had been made to feel like a guest in my own family. But 32 years of conditioning does not evaporate because you finally have clarity. I offered them my second property, the one I was not living in, the investment property I had been renting out. I told them they could live there rent-free. I would cover the property taxes and major repairs. They just needed to handle utilities and day-to-day expenses. My mother cried and hugged me, told me I was saving them, told me I was such a good daughter. My father actually looked me in the eye for maybe the first time in years and said thank you. For a brief, foolish moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was how I finally became real to them. My brother moved in with them 3 days later. No one asked me. No one even told me until I drove by to drop off some spare furniture and saw his car in the driveway. When I called my mother to ask about it, she sounded genuinely confused by my question. Well, where else would he live? He cannot afford his own place, and we have the space now. You do not mind, do you? I did mind. I minded very much. But I said it was fine, because that is what I always did. The first month was quiet. They moved in, got settled, sent me a few thank you texts that felt obligatory but at least acknowledged the situation. I visited once, brought a housewarming gift, endured an awkward dinner where my brother scrolled through his phone and my parents asked surface-level questions about my work. It was not good, but it was manageable. Then my mother called with a request. Could my brother have a credit card on my account? Just for emergencies, she assured me. He was trying to build credit, and it would help him if he had access to something with a better limit. She promised they would monitor his spending. Every instinct told me this was a terrible idea. But when I hesitated, when I said I was not sure that was a good idea, my mother's voice shifted, became smaller, sadder. She said she understood if I did not trust him. She said she knew I had already done so much. She said they would figure something else out, even though she did not know how. The guilt was instant and overwhelming. Here I was, with 3 properties and a solid salary, refusing to help my own brother build a better future? What kind of person does that? What kind of sister? I set up a card with a $500 monthly limit. I told my mother this was for emergencies only, and I would be watching the statements. She agreed immediately, thanked me profusely, assured me it would not be abused. 2 weeks later, she called again. Could they have another card for household expenses? Groceries, supplies, things for the house. It would just be easier than constantly asking me for money, and they were trying to stretch their limited income as far as possible. I could feel the pattern forming. I could see exactly where this was heading, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid, untrusting, ungenerous. So I set up another card with an $800 monthly limit. Household expenses only, I emphasized. My mother promised they would be careful. The first statement arrived 3 weeks later. My brother had spent $470 on electronics and designer clothes. Not a single emergency in sight. The household card showed groceries, yes, but also premium steaks, expensive wines, delivery services. I stared at the numbers on my laptop screen at 1 a.m, unable to sleep, my stomach churning with anger and something deeper, something that felt like grief. They were using me, not even subtly. They were just taking and assuming I would let them, because I always had. My Aunt Rosa called me the next day. She is my mother's sister, the only family member who ever treated me like I actually belonged. She had heard about the living arrangement through family gossip and wanted to check on me. When I told her about the credit cards, there was a long silence on the line. Finally, she said, "Sweetheart, you know they are exploiting you, right? You see that?" I did see it, but hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way I had been avoiding. I told her I was just trying to help family. She told me that family does not treat people like ATM machines. She told me to protect myself before it got worse. It got worse. I started having insomnia. Real insomnia, not just occasional restlessness. I would lie awake reviewing bank statements in my head, calculating how much this was costing me, wondering when I became the family wallet. During the day, I was exhausted, distracted at work, snapping at colleagues over minor things. I told myself this was just an adjustment period. Once they settled in, once my brother found better work, things would balance out. I was being dramatic. They were family. Family makes sacrifices for each other. But late at night, staring at my ceiling, I could not shake the feeling that I was the only one sacrificing anything. At a family dinner 6 weeks after they moved in, I watched my brother casually mention that he finally had a decent life now. He said it while eating the expensive takeout they had ordered on the household card. Wearing a new jacket I knew he had charged to the emergency card. He did not look at me when he said it, did not acknowledge that every aspect of his suddenly decent life was funded by my decade of hard work. My parents laughed and agreed that it was nice to finally be comfortable. My father clinked his wine glass against my mother's. They toasted to new beginnings. I excused myself to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub for 10 minutes, trying to remember how to breathe normally. When I came back out, they were discussing plans to redecorate the living room. They did not notice I had been gone. I drove home that night with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got to my condo, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother thanking me for coming to dinner, saying how much they loved having family together. I did not respond. 3 months into their tenancy, my brother got engaged. I found out through a Facebook post before anyone told me directly. The announcement showed him with a woman I had never met, both of them beaming, caption reading, "She said yes, 3 months together, and I have never been more certain of anything." 3 months. He had known this woman for 3 months and was already planning a wedding. My mother called an hour after I saw the post. She was breathless with excitement, talking about wedding plans, about how wonderful the fiancé was, about how my brother was finally settling down. I waited for her to acknowledge that maybe this was fast, that maybe they should take time, but she never did. She just steamrolled ahead with enthusiasm I had never heard directed at any of my accomplishments. Then she said the thing that made my blood turn cold. "They will need somewhere to live after the wedding, of course, just temporarily, until they get on their feet. We were thinking they could stay at your third property." The one you are not using right now? My third property. My investment. The house I had bought last year that I was in the process of renovating to rent out at a higher rate. The property that represented years of saving and careful financial planning. For the first time in my life, I said no clearly and directly. I told her that property was an investment, that I had plans for it, that it was not available. The silence on the other end of the line was shocked, then hurt, then cold. She said she understood. She said she would tell my brother. She said she hoped I knew what I was doing, turning my back on family like this. I ended the call and immediately felt sick, guilty, selfish, all the feelings they had trained me to feel whenever I prioritized myself over their wants. The call started the next day. My mother, my father, even my brother himself, all reaching out separately with variations of the same message. Family helps family. This was just temporary. Why was I being so difficult when I had the means to help? Did I not want my brother to be happy? After 3 days of this, the calls stopped being requests and started being accusations. I was being cruel. I was holding grudges from childhood. I was jealous of my brother's happiness. I needed to remember where I came from and who gave me opportunities. That last one came from my father. Who gave me opportunities? Like I should be grateful they chose to adopt me. Like everything I had built was somehow their gift to me rather than my own work. I held firm. No, they could not use my third property. No, I was not changing my mind. No, I was not discussing this further. Then my father played his final card. He called on a Saturday morning and his voice was different, measured and cold. He said it would be a real shame if the extended family found out I was refusing to help my own brother. That people might not understand how someone so successful could be so selfish. That this kind of thing tends to get around. It was a threat. Soft, but unmistakable. Do what we want, or we will make you the villain of the family story. I hung up without responding. Sat on my couch staring at the wall for an hour. Then I called them back and said fine. My brother and his fiancée could stay at the third property temporarily after the wedding. 6 months maximum while they saved up. My mother's relief was audible. She thanked me 17 times in 2 minutes. Said she knew I would come around. Said family always comes through for each other. I felt numb. The next day, I got a call from my cousin asking if I was planning the engagement party. I said no. Why would I be planning it? She sounded confused. She said my mother told everyone I had volunteered to host and pay for it. I had not volunteered anything, but apparently that was the story being circulated. I called my mother to correct this and she acted surprised, said there must have been a misunderstanding. But since everyone already thought I was hosting, would it not be easier to just go ahead with it? Otherwise, people would ask questions. I agreed to host a small gathering. Emphasis on small. 50 people maximum, casual food, simple setup. Nothing extravagant. My mother agreed, then proceeded to invite 80 people and hire a catering company. When I saw the invoice forwarded to my email, assuming I would pay, I called her immediately. She said she thought I wanted to do something nice for my brother. She said she was just trying to make his day special since he had waited so long to find love. She said the extended family was so excited to celebrate. The invoice was $3,000. $3,000 for a party I never agreed to throw for an engagement I found out about through social media. I paid the invoice. Not because I wanted to, not because I thought it was right, but because I was so tired of fighting, and the alternative was having this become another story about my selfishness that would follow me through every future family gathering. My brother never thanked me for the party, never even acknowledged I had paid for it. He showed up, had a good time, accepted congratulations, and left. 2 weeks before the wedding, the engaged couple started moving some of their belongings into my third property. Not a lot, just a few boxes, some furniture they had bought. When I found out, I called my brother to ask what they were doing. He said they were just getting a head start since they would be moving in right after the honeymoon. Made sense to start early, right? I reminded him the wedding had not happened yet. He laughed and said he knew, but this was just easier. Then he hung up. I drove to the property that afternoon. Sure enough, their stuff was already filling the spare bedroom, spilling into the living room. They had made themselves at home in a space that was not yet theirs, assuming I would just accept it because I always accepted everything. I stood in that living room surrounded by their boxes and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, just crack. Like a windshield with a spreading fracture, still holding together but fundamentally compromised. The wedding was in 2 weeks. I had already paid for catering at the engagement party they planned without my consent. I was already providing the place they would live rent-free. I was already funding their lifestyle through credit cards I never should have approved. And I still had not received a wedding invitation. The week before the wedding, my mother mentioned casually during a phone call that the ceremony would be small, just immediate family. I asked what she meant by immediate family. She said my parents and the bride's parents. That was it. I asked if I was invited. There was an uncomfortable pause. Then she said she would talk to my brother and get back to me. She did not get back to me. 3 days before the wedding, I showed up at my parents' house unannounced. I needed to hear this directly. I needed to look them in the eye and understand what was happening. My mother answered the door and immediately looked nervous. She invited me in but kept glancing toward the kitchen where I could hear my brother and his fiancée talking with my father. The house smelled like someone was cooking a big meal. There were people in the living room too. Aunts and uncles and cousins, all gathered for a pre-wedding celebration lunch. I walked into the living room and it fell quiet. 20 people, maybe more, all looking at me with expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort. My brother was holding court in the center, showing everyone something on his phone. He saw me and his face did something complicated. Annoyance, maybe. Or guilt. Hard to tell. Then he raised his voice, addressing the room but clearly performing for an audience. He said since everyone was here, he wanted to make something clear about the wedding ceremony. He said it was going to be an intimate affair, just the real parents. He paused, made sure everyone was listening, then added that the adopted sister would not be attending because having her there would ruin the sanctity of his special day with her presence as a reminder of charity rather than blood. The kitchen sounds stopped. The entire house went silent. I stood there in the doorway between the hall and the living room, feeling my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone must be able to hear it. My hands started trembling. My face felt hot. I looked at my mother. She had gone pale, eyes wide. But she said nothing. I looked at my father. He shifted in his chair, jaw tight, but he did not speak. No one defended me. No one said this was cruel or wrong or unacceptable. Aunt Rosa, standing near the window, had tears in her eyes. But even she did not speak up in that moment. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. My brother was watching me with something like satisfaction, like he had finally said what he had always felt, and was waiting for my reaction. I surprised myself by how calm my voice was when I spoke. I said I would not be attending the wedding. I wished him and his fiancée happiness. Then I turned and walked out of the house. At the door, Aunt Rosa caught my arm and whispered, "You do not deserve this." But her voice was so quiet, so defeated. She let me go. I drove home in complete silence. Did not turn on the radio. Did not cry. Did not scream. I was past emotion, existing in some space beyond hurt where everything felt very clear and simple. They did not want me. They never had. I was useful when I could provide things, tolerated when I stayed in my designated role. But I was not family. Not really. I was the adopted sister, the charity case, the source of money and housing who should be grateful for scraps of attention. 32 years of trying to earn something that was never going to be offered freely. 32 years of accepting less than I deserved because I thought family was supposed to be worth the sacrifice. I parked in my building's garage and sat in my car for a long time, watching the concrete walls in the dim light. Then I took out my phone and started making a list. The wedding was in 3 days. I had 72 hours to reclaim my life. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. When I woke up at 6 in the morning on the day of the wedding, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The clarity was almost frightening. No anger, no sadness, just pure focused certainty. I called an emergency locksmith at 7 in the morning, gave him the address of my third property and told him I needed all the locks changed immediately that morning as soon as possible. He said he could be there by 8. I met him there at 7:55. The house looked exactly as I remembered from my last visit. Boxes of my brother's belongings still scattered through the rooms like they already owned the place. I walked through slowly while the locksmith worked, taking photos of everything on my phone, documentation, proof of the condition of the property, proof that their things were here without my final authorization, proof to protect myself against whatever accusations would come later. By 9 o'clock, the locks were changed. New keys in my hand, old keys completely useless. The locksmith asked if everything was okay, picking up on something tense in my demeanor. I told him everything was fine, paid him extra for the rush job, and waited until he left. Then I took out a piece of paper and wrote a note in clear, simple handwriting. Adopted sisters do not lend houses to people who despise them. The old keys no longer work. I taped it to the front door at eye level where they could not miss it. Took a photo of that too. Then I locked up with the new keys and drove away. Back at my condo, I opened my laptop and logged into my credit card accounts. The emergency card for my brother showed $415, charged in the last week alone. Electronics, clothing, bar tabs. The household card showed $760, including premium groceries and a wine delivery service. I canceled both cards, immediately. The system asked if I was sure, warned me that any recurring charges would fail. I clicked confirm on both without hesitation. Then I called the catering company for the wedding reception, asked to speak to the manager. When she came on the line, I asked very politely if she could confirm who had placed the order and how payment was being handled. There was typing on the other end, then a confused pause. She said the order had been placed by my mother, but the payment method on file was listed as to be confirmed by family, assumed covered by sister. No deposit had been taken. No credit card was on file. They were expecting payment on delivery. I thanked her and hung up. Did not clarify anything. Did not offer to pay. Just let that chaos sit there waiting to unfold in a few hours when they would need to figure out how to cover $3,000 in catering they had assumed I would handle. It was 10:30 in the morning. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. The reception was at 5. I made myself breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh coffee. Ate slowly at my kitchen table with the sunlight coming through the window. Put my phone on silent and left it in another room. Then I waited. The first call came at 9 that evening. I had been expecting it earlier, but I guess they had spent the day dealing with the immediate crisis of the locked house and the unpaid catering and the canceled credit cards before they could focus their fury on me. It was my brother. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it an hour later. His voice was barely controlled rage, shaking with it. He said I was a psychopath, that I had ruined his wedding day, that they had shown up to the house for their wedding night and could not get inside, had to scramble to find a hotel with his new wife in her wedding dress carrying suitcases from the car. He called me a vindictive bitch and a few other things I will not repeat. He never once mentioned what he had said about me at the pre-wedding lunch, never acknowledged that part at all. The second call came 20 minutes later. My mother, alternating between crying and yelling. How could I do this? Today of all days? Did I have any idea what I had done? They had to borrow money from the bride's parents to cover the catering. My brother and his wife spent their wedding night in a budget hotel. I had humiliated the entire family. I listened to the whole voicemail, then deleted it. My father called at 10. His voicemail was shorter, colder. He said I had crossed a line, that there would be consequences, that I needed to fix this immediately and apologize to everyone. I deleted that one too. At 10:45, my phone started buzzing with texts. My mother, my father, my brother, his new wife, all sending variations of outrage and demands. I read them once, then blocked all 4 numbers. Then my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I answered, thinking it might be work, and heard my brother's voice. He had borrowed someone's phone. He was screaming before I could even say hello, telling me I was not family, never was family, that they had made a mistake adopting me, and should have left me wherever I came from. I hung up, blocked that number too. More unknown numbers called. I stopped answering. At midnight, completely drained, I called Aunt Rosa. She picked up on the first ring like she had been waiting. Her voice was gentle when she said my name. I told her everything I had done. The locks, the credit cards, the catering situation. I told her I knew this was nuclear, that I had burned the bridge completely, but I could not keep lighting myself on fire to keep them warm. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Good. I am proud of you. That took courage." I started crying. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears of relief that someone understood. She stayed on the phone with me for an hour, not saying much, just being present while I processed what I had done. Before we hung up, she told me to expect more fallout, said my parents would not let this go, that my brother would try to retaliate. She said she would do what she could to provide perspective to other family members, but I should prepare for most of them to side against me. I thanked her and went to bed, slept for 10 hours straight. The fallout started in earnest the next morning. My email inbox was flooded with messages from relatives I barely knew, all telling me I was cruel, ungrateful, heartless. How dare I ruin my brother's wedding? How dare I abandon my family after everything they did for me? Everything they did for me. Like adopting me was some eternal debt I could never repay. I read through the messages once, feeling strangely detached, then created a filter to automatically archive anything with keywords related to the situation. I did not have the energy to defend myself to people who had never once defended me. My cousin, who had asked about the engagement party, sent a text that was different from the others. She said she did not know all the details, but she remembered me always being kind, and she hoped I was okay. It was not much, but it helped. 2 other cousins sent similar messages over the next few days. Aunt Rosa sent me a long email explaining that she had spoken with several family members, and while most were angry, a few were starting to ask questions about what led up to this. She said the full story would eventually come out, and not everyone would believe the version my parents were selling. 3 days after the wedding, my mother called from yet another unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, not crying, exhausted. She asked if we could talk. I said we were talking now. She tried to negotiate, said she understood I was upset. But could we work something out? Could they keep living in the second property at least? Could I reinstate the credit cards with lower limits? Could I give them the new keys to the third property so my brother and his wife could move in? I said no to everything. My voice was steady, almost bored. I had spent 3 days processing my decision and I knew it was right. She pivoted to pleading, said they had nowhere else to go, that my brother could not afford rent on his salary, that they were family and family forgives. I interrupted her, asked her why family only seemed to matter when they needed something from me, asked her why she never defended me when my brother called me the adopted one like it was an insult, asked her why she thought I should be grateful for the absolute minimum of parenting, while my brother received unconditional love for simply existing. She tried to deflect, said I was remembering things wrong, that they always treated me well, that I was being oversensitive about childhood things that did not matter anymore. I asked her about the graduation she missed, the Christmas with used books, the pre-wedding lunch where her son humiliated me in front of 20 people while she stayed silent. She said those were complicated situations, that I did not understand all the factors, that she was sorry if I felt hurt, but that was not their intention. I told her I was done with apologies that put the blame on my feelings rather than their actions. I told her she had 6 months to find alternative housing. After that, they would need to pay market rate rent on the second property or leave. She started crying, said I was being cruel after everything they had done for me. I said, "You keep saying that. Everything you did for me. But what exactly did you do? You gave me a home, yes. You fed me and clothed me. The legal minimum of care required by adoption law. But love, respect, equality, those were always reserved for your real son." She denied it, said she loved me, that I was her daughter. I asked her why she did not say that at the pre-wedding lunch when it mattered. She had no answer for that. I told her we were done talking, that she should focus on figuring out her housing situation, that I would not be discussing this further. She begged me not to hang up. I hung up anyway. My father tried next, a week later. His approach was different, more calculated. He started by acknowledging that maybe they had not always been fair to me, that maybe they had favored my brother in some ways. He said they wanted to work on that, wanted to rebuild our relationship. I asked if he was saying this because he genuinely wanted a better relationship or because he wanted to keep living in my property rent-free. The pause before he answered told me everything I needed to know. He said that was not fair, that he was being sincere, but his voice lacked conviction. I told him the same thing I told my mother. 6 months, then they pay rent or leave. I was done negotiating. He tried to argue that 6 months was not enough time to save up for a deposit on another place. I reminded him they had been spending hundreds of dollars monthly on premium groceries and wine. Maybe they should reevaluate their priorities. He said I was being vindictive, that this was not about justice, it was about revenge. Maybe he was right. Maybe there was an element of revenge in my decision. But mostly, I was just exhausted from carrying the weight of their entitlement. I was not being vindictive. I was being done. We did not speak again after that call. My brother tried once more. About 10 days after the wedding, he had gotten a new phone number and caught me off guard when I answered. He was not yelling this time. He sounded defeated, almost humble. He said he knew he had said some terrible things, that he had been stressed about the wedding and had not really meant it. I asked him which part he had not meant. The part about me not being real family? The part about my presence ruining his special day? The part about me being a reminder of charity rather than blood? He stumbled over his words. Said he had just been trying to keep the wedding small and intimate, that it was not personal. I told him that excluding me from a family event specifically because I was adopted while announcing it to 20 relatives who were invited was the definition of personal. He shifted tactics. Said his wife was pregnant. Only a few weeks. But they had just found out. Did I really want to be the aunt who cut off her nephew or niece over a misunderstanding? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. I told him congratulations on the pregnancy. I told him I hoped his child would never know what it felt like to be the second choice in their own family. Then I hung up and blocked his new number. His wife tried reaching me through social media. A long message about how she had not known about the family dynamics, that she thought my brother was being too harsh but she loved him, that she hoped we could all move forward for the sake of the baby. I did not respond. Not because I blamed her necessarily, but because engaging with her would just open another channel for them to pressure me. I needed clean boundaries, and that meant cutting off all the avenues they could use to get to me. The extended family drama continued for about 6 weeks. Messages went from angry to pleading to angry again. Relatives who had never called me on my birthday suddenly deeply concerned about family unity. Aunt Rosa kept me updated on the narrative my parents were crafting. Mentally unstable, jealous, always difficult. Some relatives believed it. Others started seeing holes in the story when details about the credit cards and housing surfaced. 2 younger cousins reached out privately to say they were proud of me. One shared her own story of being financially exploited by a sibling. Those messages meant more than I expected. By month 3, the communication slowed down. My parents had apparently accepted, at least temporarily, that I was not changing my mind. They stopped calling and texting. The extended family moved on to other dramas. Life continued. I used the money I would have been spending on credit card bills and unplanned expenses to book a trip to Europe. 2 weeks in France and Italy, traveling solo, eating amazing food, seeing art that made me feel something other than tired for the first time in months. In Paris, I sat at a cafe in the Latin Quarter with a paperback book and a coffee, watching people walk by, and realized I felt light. Actually, light. Like someone had removed a heavy coat I had been wearing so long I forgot I could take it off. I took a selfie there, me smiling genuinely in front of a bookshop, the kind of photo I never took because I always felt awkward documenting my solo experiences. But in that moment, I wanted to remember how it felt to choose myself. When I got back, I enrolled in a leadership development course I had been putting off for years, invested in my career in ways I had not had the bandwidth for when I was managing everyone else's crises. My performance at work improved noticeably. My boss mentioned I seemed more focused, more present. I also started therapy with a professional specializing in family dynamics and adoption trauma. I had resisted for years, telling myself I was fine, I had dealt with it. But I was not fine. I was functional, successful, independent. But I was also carrying 32 years of rejection and conditional acceptance. My therapist helped me see patterns I had not recognized. How I had spent my adult life trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it freely. How my success was driven partly by a desperate need to prove I was worth keeping. How I had confused being useful with being valued. She also helped me understand that setting boundaries was not cruelty, that walking away from toxicity was not abandonment, that I did not owe anyone continued access to me just because we shared DNA or legal papers. 4 months after the wedding, I got a formal letter from a lawyer representing my parents demanding compensation for emotional distress and breach of implied contract. My own lawyer read it and laughed, told me it was nonsense with no legal standing, drafted a firm response, and that was the end of it. My brother and his wife had moved into a small apartment, struggling but managing. He had finally gotten a full-time job. His wife was working until the baby came. They were learning to be actual adults without a safety net. My parents were still in my second property, coming up on the 6-month deadline I had given them. I had not extended the deadline, and I had not wavered on the rent requirement. They would need to start paying market rate rent starting in 2 months, or they would need to leave. Aunt Rosa warned me they were hoping I would back down at the last minute, betting on my guilt kicking in again. But the guilt was different now, quieter, more manageable. My therapist had helped me reframe it as disappointment in the version of myself who still believed being good enough would make them love me. That version was wrong, and I was learning to be okay with that. At the 5-month mark, my parents requested a meeting. Neutral location, just the 3 of us. Aunt Rosa advised against it, said it was probably another manipulation attempt. But part of me needed to see them face to face one more time. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. They looked older than I remembered, tired. My mother's hair had more gray. My father's face was more lined. We ordered coffee and sat at a corner table. For a long minute, no one spoke. Finally, my mother said, "We are sorry." I waited. She continued, "We did not realize how much we hurt you. We thought we were doing right by both of you. But we see now that we were not fair." My father nodded. "We favored your brother. That was wrong." I sipped my coffee. "Is this the part where I am supposed to forgive you and everything goes back to how it was?" "We hoped we could start over," my mother said. "Not go back, but build something new." I asked them what that would look like. What specifically would be different? They looked at each other. My father cleared his throat. "We would make more effort to spend time with you, include you in family decisions, treat you with the respect you deserve." "And the housing situation?" I asked. My mother hesitated. "We were hoping you might reconsider the rent requirement. We are trying to save money, and market rate rent would take most of our income." There it was. The real reason for the meeting. They needed something, so they were willing to apologize. I asked them if they thought I did not deserve rent on my property, if they thought I should continue subsidizing their lifestyle while they saved money. "It is not like that," my father said. "We just need more time." "You have had 6 months," I said. "You have had your entire retirement to prepare for this. You chose not to." My mother started crying. Quiet tears, not dramatic. "We made mistakes. We know that. But you are our daughter. Does that not count for something?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had raised me, who had clothed me and fed me and sent me to school, who had also made me feel like a guest in my own family for 32 years. "It counts," I said finally, "but not enough to erase everything else. Not enough to make me responsible for your financial security while you exclude me from your family." "We do not exclude you," my father protested. "You let my brother humiliate me in front of 20 relatives and said nothing," I said quietly. "You prioritized his comfort over my dignity my entire life. That is exclusion. That is making me an outsider in my own family." They did not have a response to that. I told them the rent requirement stood. If they could not afford it, I would give them an additional month to find alternative housing. But that was the final extension. My mother asked what it would take for me to forgive them. I told her I did not know if I ever would. That forgiveness was not the same as reconciliation, and reconciliation required changed behavior. Not just apologies when they needed something. We finished our coffee in uncomfortable silence. When we left, my mother tried to hug me. I let her, but I did not hug back. It felt like hugging a stranger. Now, 4 months later, I watch the sunset from my living room window and think about how different my life looks. My parents moved out of my second property 6 weeks ago. They found a small apartment they could afford on their retirement income. My brother helped them with the security deposit, which shocked everyone, including me. Maybe becoming a father was changing him. Or maybe he just realized he could not rely on me anymore. They are not in my life regularly. We exchange brief texts on holidays, surface level, polite. I do not know if that will ever change. Part of me hopes it will. Part of me knows it probably will not. My brother's son was born 2 months ago. Aunt Rosa sent me a photo. A tiny wrinkled baby with a full head of dark hair. I felt nothing looking at it. Not anger, not joy, just nothing. Maybe someday I will feel something. Or maybe that branch of the family tree is just severed for good. I got promoted at work. My boss said I had been demonstrating leadership qualities she had not seen in me before. More confidence, better boundaries, stronger decision-making. Turns out removing toxic energy from your life makes you better at everything else. I am still in therapy. Probably will be for a while. I am working through a lot of complicated feelings about adoption, about belonging, about what family means when it is not unconditional. Some days are harder than others, but the hard days do not swallow me whole anymore. I renovated my third property and rented it out at market rate to a nice couple in their 30s. They pay on time, treat the place well, and we have a professional landlord-tenant relationship. It feels good to have that property serving its intended purpose, rather than being a symbol of my misplaced guilt. The second property is also rented out now. Different tenants, a small family with a kid in elementary school. They sent me a thank you card when they moved in. That card is on my fridge. It is a small thing, but it represents respect and appreciation. Two things I was chronically short on in my family. I went on 2 more trips this year. Portugal in the spring, Japan in the fall. Solo travel has become my favorite thing. No one to compromise with, no one to manage, just me and whatever I want to see. I take so many photos now, documenting my life in a way I never did before. One of those photos, the one from the bookshop in Paris, is framed on my wall. I look at it sometimes when I am having doubts, when the old guilt tries to creep back in. That woman in the photo is smiling genuinely. She is not trying to earn anyone's approval. She is just existing, content, free. That is who I am becoming. Slowly, imperfectly, but becoming nonetheless. I do not know if I will ever have the family I wanted. The one where I am not the adopted kid, the outsider, the one who has to earn love. Maybe that family never existed, or maybe it just was not meant to be mine. I am learning to be okay with that. What I do have is my own life, my own choices, my own boundaries. I have a career I am proud of, properties I worked hard for, experiences that are mine alone. I have Aunt Rosa, who calls me every Sunday just to check in. I have a couple of cousins who text memes and ask how I am doing. I have my therapist, who helps me process all the messy, complicated feelings. It is not the family I grew up wanting, but it is a family I chose, and that matters. Sometimes I wonder if my parents understand what they lost. If my brother looks at his son and thinks about how he treated his sister, if he will teach that boy to value people for who they are rather than what they can provide. I will probably never know, and I am learning that is okay. Their journey is theirs. Mine is mine. I am 33 now. I have been free from their expectations for almost a year. In that time, I have learned that I am not selfish for having boundaries. I am not cruel for protecting myself. I am not ungrateful for demanding respect. I am just a person who finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep others warm. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough.